In this lesson, we're going to be creating a UI-based minimap. So in the last lesson, we created the minimap that we see here using a basic camera. Now we're going to be using images for our UI-based minimap. So to get started, we are going to be in the lesson 8 start. As you can see up here, this is the scene that we have open right now. Let's go into the project source files. So in the lesson 8 folder, you're going to find the starting package, which is this scene right here. Now you will need to import a few images, which is in the assets folder. We have a map and a circle. The map is going to be used for our minimap, just like we have here. Then we have a circle, which is going to be used as a mask. So just drag them both into the UI folder in your project panel. And when you do that, you want to make sure that you set both of them to Sprite, 2D, and UI. As you can see here, I have the circle selected, Sprite, 2D, and UI. Same thing for the map as well. Now once you do that, let's go into the camera itself. We're going to be adjusting the culling mask section. We don't want to display anything with the culling mask, so set this to nothing, and that minimap should disappear. Now let's go into the UI system. We do have a few icons and a few images that we're going to be using with our minimap, which is underneath the minimap bounds. So left click on it and enable it by clicking on the checkbox in the inspector panel. There we go. Now we have our minimap bounds, which is an image, along with our icons. Now I did resize these icons. If you go into the icons themselves, you can select all of them, switch into the scene view, then using the UI tool, you can resize them with the bounding box here. Now we're going to be applying a script to our UI canvas itself, which is going to be our minimap script. So let's go into the scripts folder. You'll find a minimap script in there. Double click to open it up. Now at the very top, we have a namespace for our Unity engine.ui. We are going to be using UI elements, so we need to have this in here. We have a reference to 3 game objects. So public, game object, player, enemy, and ammo. These are the 3 objects we are going to be tracking with our minimap. Next, we have a public rect transform. A rect transform is applied to UI elements only. So it's very similar to a transform component on a sphere or a cube. So we have a public rect transform, player icon, enemy icon, and ammo icon. These are all going to be images that we're going to be using with our player, enemy, and ammo. Next, we have a bounding box for our minimap, which is going to be the minimap bounds image, which is also a rect transform. We have a reference to our camera. We're going to be using the screen space information from this camera, so public camera cam. Then we have 2 private variables, which are both going to be vector2 values. And this is going to be used to calculate the vector3 position of our player, enemy, and ammo, and converting that into a vector2 value that we can use with our canvas. Now within the start function, we're going to grab our rect transform component from the minimap bounds. Within the update function, we're going to be using 3 functions in here. So player marker, ammo marker, and enemy marker. Now each one of these functions is exactly the same. They're just using different variables. So we have vector2 player position. We're going to be grabbing the vector2 value of our player position. So we're going to set that equal to cam being the camera, cam.world to viewport point, player.transform.position. This will allow us to convert our vector3 value into a vector2, which is x and y, versus the vector3, which is a x, y, and z coordinate system. Next, we're going to be using that within our player screen. So we're going to be calculating the information based on our screen coordinate system with our canvas coordinate system. So this is going to be a little bit difficult to understand, but I'll try my best to explain it. So we have an x and y position. So first off, we're going to be grabbing the player position.x times our minimap bounds.sizedelta.x, and we're going to be subtracting that from our minimap bounds.sizedelta.x times 0.5. Now the reason why we're doing this is because the screen coordinate system and the canvas coordinate system has the center point of 0, 0 at different locations. So the canvas starts at 0, 0 in the center of the canvas, whereas the screen would start off in the bottom left. So this allows us to calculate that information and then utilize that within our minimap bounds so that we can use our player information, the player coordinate system, and convert that into a screen space coordinate system for our canvas. So we're converting our player position into our canvas position, and that's all we're doing here. So we need the x and a y position for both of those. So here we have the x and y, and we're saving that all within our player screen variables. So once we've calculated all that information, we're then going to be setting our player icon, which is the image itself. This time we're setting the rect transform dot anchored position equals player screen. So we're setting that icon, that image of the player icon, to whatever we calculated within our player screen. Now we're doing the same thing for the enemy marker along with the ammo marker, except this time we're using a enemy position and the ammo position here as well. Everything else is exactly the same. We're still calculating the same information, but for different variables. All right, let's go ahead and save this out, minimize this. We're going to be applying this to our UI canvas. So just drag it over from the scripts folder into the inspector panel. We need to assign our player, our enemy, and the ammo. So the player is going to be the moving rig. The enemy is going to be our dummy character directly in front of us. So go into the dummy group, and you'll see enemy dummy without any numbers. This is the enemy dummy we want to use. Next, we have the ammo. We're just going to be using this cube right here, which is our trigger. Now, all the icons in here are in the UI system. So we have our player icon. We have our enemy icon. And then finally, the ammo icon. Now, since we're not using the friendly icon, we can just disable this for now. Next, we need our minimap bounds, which is going to be this image right here. That'll be the bounding box for our minimap. Just drag it over into that slot. Then finally, we need a camera. In this case, we're using a stationary camera. Now, the reason why we're using a stationary camera versus using the camera on our character is that if you use the camera on your character, it is going to be very erratic. The icons won't line up properly, and you'll see them moving around a lot. If you use a stationary camera, it's much smoother and it's more accurate. All right, so we have everything set up so far, but we need to add in a map image as our background for our minimap. So we're going to go into the minimap bounds, right-click in here, UI, image. Let's just rename this to map. Let's go into our UI folder. We're going to be using this map image in there, so go into the source image slot. Now this image is fairly large. As you can see, it's 1920 by 940. We are going to be using that same width and height. Let's jump back into our scene view, and now we're going to be resizing this so it fits our box right here as best as possible. So I'm going to be resizing this manually because it is a rectangle shape versus the box shape that we have for our minimap bounds. So holding shift, we're going to just drag this in. All right, so you want to do your best to have that image basically fill up the entirety of that minimap bounds. You don't want to have any empty spaces up here or down here because the icons can't appear there because the minimap bounds is this bounding box right here. So you want to make sure that the image fills that bounding box as best as possible. Now we want to cover up these sides right here. So we're going to be using a mask on our minimap bounds, and we're going to be using the mask in conjunction with our map. First off, let's move the map to the very top. This will allow the enemy icons and the player icons and things of that sort to appear above that image. Now we need to create a new image, so right-click on the minimap bounds, UI, image. We're going to rename this to mask. Let's move this to the top of the stack once again. And now we're going to be using the anchor presets to adjust the size of that image so that it fills the minimap bounds as best as possible. So hold down Shift and Alt. Left click on the bottom right. So once again, hold down Shift and Alt, click on the bottom right. This will allow that image to fill the entirety of that container. It's actually disabled in map for now, so we can see what the image looks like. So it's a little bit hard to see, but I believe it does exceed the bounding box itself. If we switch this to a black color, you can see this a little bit better. And we want to make sure that we're picking the right image there. Now, if we take a close look, we can only see this line right here of the bounding box. So I actually need to resize this manually, just slightly. If you switch to the game view, you can see this a little bit better. So now we have the bounding box appearing quite nicely with our image. Now we're not going to be displaying the black image. We do want to display the map. This is just a reference point for our mask. Now we need to apply a mask component to this image. So go into the inspector panel, go to add component, type in mask in the search bar, and click on the first one that appears. There we go. Now we don't want to display the black image, so we're going to uncheck show mask graphic. And now it's transparent. Let's enable the map once again. And we need to make the map a child object of the mask itself. And there we go. Now we have a nice looking map image that has been masked out using a mask image. So now if we hit play, we can see how this works. You can see our player icon moves around. Our enemy icon is up here. And for the most part, it is fairly accurate. Here's our ammo icon. Now you will notice that our player icon actually goes underneath the ammo icon. You can adjust the settings within the hierarchy itself so that the player icon appears above all other icons. And we don't have any rotation values. This is something that you can modify yourself. But for the most part, we have a nice looking icon system for our minimap. Now let's go over how we can use another type of mask, which is our circle. So if you want to use a circular type of minimap, we're going to be using a mask for that as well. So I'm actually going to be creating a new mask altogether. Let's go back to our minimap bounds, right click, UI, image. Once again, we'll just name this mask, circular. Move this to the top of the stack. Let's disable the mask that we have currently right now so we can see the size of that image. We're going to be using the circle, which is a little bit bigger. It's 800 by 600. Drag that into the source image slot. Adjust the width and the height to 800 by 600. And now we're going to be resizing this manually. So I just want this to match the size of the bounding box as best as possible. Something like that would be good. All right, and once again, go through the same process of adding the mask component. Go to Add Component, type in Mask in the search bar, uncheck Show Mask Graphic. Now, let's go ahead and enable the other mask. Let's move the map out of that one and into the mask circular. We can disable the other mask now. Now, if you don't want to see the bounding box, now you don't want to disable that image, but you do want to adjust the alpha value of it. So let's go into the color, adjust the alpha right here, bring it all the way down to 0. And now if we hit play, we can see we have a nice circular looking image-based minimap. Now you will notice that the icons kind of do appear outside of that image. So right here I'm in a corner, you can see the icon appears outside of that. That's because the icons are not children of the mask itself. We can move the icons underneath the mask circular once again. So select all the icons. Just drag them underneath the mask circular. Then make sure that the map is above those icons again. There we go. Hit play once again. And now the mask should work with all the icons as well. You can see how the icon disappears in this corner. Alright, so that's a very simple way to create two different types of minimaps. We have a UI-based minimap and a camera-based minimap.